All right, welcome back to my channel. This is Monday. This is the weekly roundup. It is the 11th of August, 2025. And this is just a summary of the kinds of things I have been working on for the week and what we're up to this week here on the channel. So I'm going to start with a little playthrough of a fingerstyle piece I am working on. This is more of what you might call traditional fingerstyle, that is to say arpeggiated chords rather than a alternating bass or steady bass with melody played on the treble strings. So here we go. Tie into what we're talking about this week, but that piece is called Sustain, and it is arranged by Colin Hill. It's part of his pickup music course on fingerstyle guitar. I am sorry for any noise it might cause, but I have to turn on the fan here. It is pretty hot here. All right, so this week we are going to be going over Tuesday we're going to be doing E-flat standard as our alternate tuning for the week. And Thursday, we're going to talk about the minor scale, minor keys, and the minor pentatonic scale, how they differ from the major and how to use them. So songs I have been working on this week include the Pearl Jam tune Footsteps, which kind of goes like this. It is driven by a riff. Riff repeats, and then it's a kind of a then back into the riff. So on. It's a really cool tune. It's one of the first songs Eddie Vedder wrote for Pearl Jam proper. I'm really enjoying it. That fingerstyle piece I just played for you has been something I've been working on, and I'm still working on composing my own song. More on that when I have something to play. And I've also been working on the Fleetwood Mac Stevie Nicks song Landslide, which is also kind of based on an arpeggiated fingerstyle pattern, where kind of this pattern. kind of hard to get into the rhythm of playing that here and now, and I am a long way from being able to play that. I've got to say, it seems like playing fingerstyle is more than 5 times harder than just playing chords, because you got to keep track of what this hand is doing, just like in any other guitar playing, whether you're playing with a pick, strumming, or what. But you also have to keep track of each of these strings on the right hand side separately. And a lot of times it's just going to be a repeated pattern. And oftentimes it's a pretty simple pattern rhythmically. So, you might be. So it might just be the same thing repeating, but you got to worry about the timing of each and every one of those notes. So for one chord, rather than strumming the chord once or strumming the chord 4 times for a measure, you're fretting that chord once, but you're hitting up to 8 different notes within that chord, each of which have to be on the 8th note or the 16th note. So it can be very challenging. Fingerstyle is kind of going to be our theme for the week, but there is one more thing I've been working on. Well, I've already posted it on the channel, so I won't stop and play it here, but I've been working on a basic 12-bar blues in G with a rumba beat. That has already been posted to the channel in the last week. You can look that up. But the theme of the week is fingerstyle guitar and everything that consists of. There are really 3, I don't know if you want to call them branches or styles or genres or subgenres or whatever of fingerstyle guitar. Arguably 4, but I'm going to condense 2. The first style is what we just talked about, this kind of arpeggiated, repeating pattern. It's a way of playing chords for accompaniment. Usually there's going to be somebody else playing a melody, or you're going to be singing a melody, but basically it's this sort of thing. Where you have a fixed position that you are fretting, and you are kind of picking notes to suggest that chord, and maybe even to suggest part of the melody, but it is fundamentally a harmony-based thing. What you're playing are chords, even if they're not played all at once. We'll call that style 1. Style 2, which is arguably 2 styles, is the kind of fingerstyle employed in roots music, whether that's blues, country, folk. But that's where you have usually the thumb responsible for bass notes, and the fingers down here on the treble strings responsible for melody notes. So what you'll actually have going on is you'll have a beat thumping away, and then you'll have melody notes that are either with that beat or syncopated. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2. I screwed that up, but on the 1, you can have notes that are pinched, that is, they go with one of the bass notes you're already playing, and you can also have 1 and 2 and 3, and you can have notes that are on the 16th. So there's, just to give you a sense of what that style looks like, I'm just going to kind of do a walk down of the first position of the E minor pentatonic here. This is kind of musical in its own right, but sometimes there's some crossover. You can have this bass note going, and you can hammer on the same string if it's necessary for like a call and response. is what we'll call traditional fingerstyle blues or roots or folk. But there is a second variation of that that's arguably a different style, and that is what is called Travis picking. That is where you might have a, like let's say we're in G. You might have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have an alternating bass line where there are two different notes that go back and forth. That's usually called Travis picking. It's attributed to Merle Travis, who probably did not invent it so much as learn it from musicians of color and make it his own, as is often the case in the history of music. So those are our first two styles, or arguably three styles. You've got arpeggiated chord style. You've got kind of a steady thumb style, and you've got alternate thumb style. The third style, which I know nothing about playing and can't even really begin to approximate, is what's called modern fingerstyle. Usually it is solo focused like the latter two, but involves things like snapping strings, slapping strings, harmonics, these weird percussive things that guys do on the bodies of their guitars. And that is very cool, but it is something I know nothing about. So I'm not really going to talk too much about that. But what is cool about fingerstyle? Well, you have direct control over your tone in a greater way than you do with a pick, because you have access to things like palm muting we discussed a week or two ago, where you can control how loud that bass note is. You have the option of really being a three-piece band, where you can be doing the bass, you can be doing chords as well, you got bass, you got harmony, you've got melody as well. You can pick out a melody with your fingers. So really you are the drum, the bass, the lead guitar, and the rhythm guitar all in one. This is very hard to do well. I feel like the effort I put in is disproportionate to the results I get compared to something like strumming, but that's life. And it is by far the coolest thing that I think you can do with an acoustic guitar, especially the fingerstyle blues. I've talked about my love of Mississippi John Hurt, Big Bill Brunzi, those classic figures. So that's something that I've been working on, trying to emulate. I've got a ways to go. The educational principle or learning principle we're going to talk about for the week is the idea of breaking things up into pieces and emphasizing the transitions. So if we look at the fingerstyle piece that I've played on here before, it begins with a pickup phrase, and then it goes into this kind of E7 passage. Then it goes to an A7 passage. And those sound pretty different, but each of those is a measure. So something I've discussed in the past is taking a measure and practicing it, just setting a timer, playing that same measure over and over again. So if we're doing this one, oops, it'd help if I played it right. So that's one measure. I can loop that, I can play that over and over again. Then I can move on to the next measure, that A7 measure that I demonstrated, which can also be looped and repeated. But the problem comes in when you've done that with 20 different measures of a song. In this case, I think there's 16 measures of the song. You can be really smooth at that E7 measure and really smooth at the A7 measure. But what happens when you get to the transition? Well, you have not practiced the transition in particular. You've practiced two separate units. So what I like to do is take the last couple beats of a given measure. So we had this. At the end of E7, and then we have this at the beginning of A7. Well, what if we took the second half of A7 from and loop that what if we just loop that as a measure? What if we arbitrarily took a line through the middle of measure 1, a line through the middle of measure 2, and made that measure 1.5, and we just played that over and over again. And so on. I find it really useful to understand the structure of a piece of music, understand where one measure ends and another measure begins, because those are going to be different ideas. And you're going to have a much better understanding of the piece of music if you focus on those measures. But to actually get the song under your fingers as a whole, I think you need to forget about that for a while. I think you need to practice things that aren't part of the idea of the music, but are part of the flow of the music. And you can do this on an even more detailed level. You can go straight from you can even go straight from that last note into that next set of two notes. You can break it down as small as you want. But oftentimes it is that one part, the end of the four and to the beginning of the one, where you fall down. And it's precisely because we focus on the piece of music as a set of measures that we run into that problem. We can overcome that by forgetting about the organizational structure of the music and looking at the transitions as a structure in their own right. I think this is much more valuable when we're talking about licks and when we're talking about fingerstyle than it is when we're talking about chords. Chord transition is an art in itself, but for the most part, by the time you are going from G to D in a given song, you have 10,000 reps of G to D from every other song that would be in the key of D. So that is not necessarily something you need to specifically practice. I mean, if it's an unusual chord that you haven't played much or an unusual transition that doesn't come up, chord that's not normally in that key, a weird voicing, a ninth chord, an 11th chord, something you don't normally run across, that can be valuable for chordal playing too, but especially for fingerstyle playing. I think it's absolutely essential. All right, so that was our educational principle for the week. We've covered our songs. Let's talk about featured instrument and featured gear. All right, I think I have shown y'all my electric guitar before, but I don't think I've really covered it as a piece of featured gear on one of these podcasts. So this is a Squier Paranormal Stratocaster. Well, what's paranormal about it? Well, you can see the pickups are set up like a telly. The body is structured like a telly with binding and everything. What is cool about that is it sort of sounds like a Telecaster. You can get some very telly-oriented tones. Let's make sure we're not too loud here. You have a very bright, very trebly kind of thing going on. Which unlike a lot of more, you know, humbucker, metal-oriented or rock-oriented guitars, you have access to a lot of treble tones here. You also have a 5-position selector switch for the different pickups. So this is all the way to the neck. A little more bassy. That's all the way to the bridge, a little more trebly. You can also combine any two that are adjacent to each other. And it gives you a much more dynamic range of tones than you might normally have access to. What's cool is this pull-out knob here. You can always turn on the neck pickup. So if you're in one of those middle positions or a position that includes the bottom two, you can turn on all 3 pickups at once, which you guys know I am primarily an acoustic player, but it is nice for me to have this as a tool. Because it enables me to play with things like tone. It's a lot easier to play scales on this just because the action is low, the strings are light, you can really get some fast, easy reps in with this. It's great for ear training. It is also nice to be able to switch up your tone and get a more distorted, more rock-oriented sound. If for whatever reason you're in that mood. That leads me into my piece of gear for the week. I'm gonna pan over and show you. Can we see it? This right here is a Fender Mustang LT25 modeling amp. What is a modeling amp? Unlike your more traditional tube amps, a modeling amp is all digital. It uses a computer program to generate the sounds of different effects, different amps, so you don't have to buy 10,000 pedals. Why is this an important piece of gear for an acoustic player? Well, I just mentioned that, you know, I like to get my scale practice in on my electric. So let's say I'm playing my scales. And it gets boring. Well, I can change up my sound considerably. Let's see. Just by playing with that knob, I can come play the same scales. And get a very different sound. I can make a lot of time go by really fast by just playing with that sound while I'm doing something that would otherwise get boring. What's kind of cool about that is I believe it comes with 32 default settings, and you can customize it. You can make new settings. People have an entire online community of spreadsheets where they will show you if you want the exact guitar tone from this song on this Eric Clapton album, set everything to 5 of this, 4 of that, 3 of this, turn this off, turn that on. So I think I'm up to 54 different settings on there. So if I am just playing my, let's say I'm playing my E minor pentatonic in open position here. So. Let's say I just go through that for a minute, get a little bored, change up my tone to, what do we got? Let's play it with some fuzz. Suddenly I'm playing something that sounds a little different. It's still ear training. I'm still getting the exact same notes. That G note is always going to be a G note. It's going to be a G note with more fuzz, more distortion, more tremolo, more vibrato, whatever. But it's not as boring. If you sit there and you go through 10 different settings and get 10 different reps of a given scale or given riff, before you know it, you've played the same thing 100 times, but you still feel like you're exploring, discovering new things, noodling, playing. It's a great way to keep yourself engaged with what otherwise might be a boring, repetitive practice. I'll be honest, I know you're not supposed to plug an acoustic guitar into an electric amp, but what happens when I do that is it just kind of sounds, it's a little more inclined to create feedback, so bear with me here. But sometimes I'll even play a fingerstyle passage that I'm having trouble with in that same repetitive mode by just setting that amp to different things, and it doesn't quite sound same as an electric guitar. It definitely doesn't play as easy as an electric guitar, but it adds some texture and some complexity to the sound. It can really highlight your mistakes in many ways, because if you hit the wrong note or if you just slide down a string too aggressively, the amp's going to pick that up and it's going to make a noise. I find it very useful as a practice tool, even for acoustic playing. I would recommend it. It's fairly inexpensive, so if playing amplified is part of your world at all, and you are not a full-fledged tone geek who has like a fancy vintage tube amp and 50 pedals, it can be a great investment. I think $100, $125, $150, somewhere in there. You see them used on Facebook Marketplace for like $100. I bought that new at Straight Music, but not much money for a lot of tonal variety. It's probably not something you're going to go gig with, although I don't see why you couldn't in a coffee shop if you're an open mic kind of guy. But it is a fun thing to have around. I have not even, I'm a bedroom player here primarily. I've never played out, so don't think I've ever gotten it past 1/3 volume. Unlike a tube amp, the characteristics of the sound aren't necessarily going to change with volume. You're not going to have to turn it up to get to breakup or distortion. You just turn on distortion. It is also compatible with pedals. I do have a few pedals. I'm not a pedal guy, but I think I got like 4 over there. I think I got a couple overdrives and a reverb. Oh yeah, and a distortion, which I really don't care for. But it's a great way to fool around with your tone, get different sounds. I do play some electric blues, so it's nice to be able to play with that tone. Try to sound like Carlos Santana, try to sound like Jeff Beck, try to sound like B.B. King. That can be fun. That is something I enjoy screwing around with. And like everything else, it is practice, it is ear training, it is fretboard training. So I would recommend experimenting with an amp, regardless of what kind of player you are. If it's in your budget or if you have one around, play with it. You might discover that it makes your practice go by a little faster. It makes things a little more exciting. A shout out for the week. I am going to shout out author and content creator David Hamburger. I have mentioned his books a couple times. Let me grab one here. Okay, so this is Acoustic Guitar Slide Basics, published by Acoustic Guitar Magazine. David Hamburger teaches you how to use Open D and Open G tuning, and he gives very basic slide licks and works up to complete tunes. What's cool about his style is he likes to break things down, and he likes to separate, and he's primarily a fingerstyle guy, so this rings true. He likes to separate the melody lines, what you're doing with usually your fingers on the treble strings, from the bass lines. So he will have you play the entire bass the entire bass part of a song. So if it's a Travis picked song in G, that might look like. That might be the whole song, the bass line of the whole song, if it's a 12-bar blues. And then I'll have you go through and just play the melody. So it might be notes that are otherwise pinched. So it might be something like. That might actually be the melody line of the song. And then he has you put them together. He has you put them together often in a simplified way where it's just the bass note, maybe one note that's pinched with the bass note, or he might have you go through and do the bass notes and the notes that are on the quarter note with the bass note, and then he might have you come back in a third iteration of the song and add in syncopated melody notes. So you kind of approach the song in stages. That's how he does a lot of his work. He's a good teacher. I think he's a skillful writer. He has a book that I think is called Acoustic Guitar Method, and it's one of those 3 volumes in one books thing where he takes you through a bunch of like roots and blues acoustic songs, picked at first. I think by book 3 he's got you throwing in some fingerstyle, but these are going to be like old-time bluegrass, folk, and blues standards that he works you up to in that same stepwise way. It's an excellent, like if I could go back and just pick one hard copy book as the thing I was going to learn with, I think it would be that. He has a book like that for fingerstyle, which unfortunately is behind my camera here, so I can't get to it. I just think it's called Fingerstyle Method. I think it's also published by Acoustic Guitar. He has a subscription site called Fretboard Confidential, where he takes everybody through usually a fingerstyle blues song, occasionally like a folk or blues adjacent song once a month. And he focuses on a song he's already been over on a deeper level for the entire quarter. I'm not really ready for that site or that level of content. I'd like to work my way up to joining that site, but he'll take something like Statesboro Blues and he'll give you like a very basic playthrough. He'll go through those 3 stages I talked about, and then he'll talk about improvisation. He'll talk about different elaborations you can put on it, ways to make it more advanced, ways to integrate hammer-ons, pull-offs, etc. And he'll do that with a different song every month, and it kind of builds up this catalog of songs you can go back to and study. Very cool idea, very cool site that I would like to join at some point in the future. He also has courses available on TrueFire that are somewhat more basic, again, mostly focused on fingerstyle blues. So David Hamburger, check him out. He plays around here. I think he lives in Austin. I would like to go see him play at some point. I know he has a residency kind of show somewhere once a month, so I'll probably check that out at some point. Anyway, that is it for the week. Again, we are going to be looking tomorrow at E-flat standard tuning, why you might use it, and what you can do with the key of E-flat in general. Kyle Orla has some cool content on the key of E-flat that I might fold in there. And Thursday, we're going to be looking at minor and minor pentatonic scales, what minor means, and how to use it. Thank you very much.